Today on DIY Creators, I'm gonna make a toolbox. The top is made from mahogany and the bottom is made from aluminum diamond sheets. Handles were placed on the side to keep the top clear, and I also took advantage of the space inside the top. This way I can dock a few tools. Before we dive into the build, I cut out a good portion of all the behind the scene cutting. Now although you can get these pieces cut at the metal store, it is much cheaper for you to bring them home and cut them yourself. They usually charge to cut, and being that I had tools, it just made sense for me to bring them back to my spot and cut them down to size. I have a list of materials listed down in the video description. Now after checking out my lumber rack, I was able to find a few pieces of mahogany pieces that I could use for this project, and I also needed some plywood for the bottom. Now as I'm assembling, I want to make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to. Using a combination square, I went around the top and I marked the line approximately 1.5 inches from the top down all the way around on both pieces of each sheet. I made a second mark about 1/2 inch in, and right where the lines intersect, I then drilled a small hole. I did this all the way around the top. Next, I took a piece of aluminum angle and placed that in the corner. I clamped that in place, and then I drilled another hole through that aluminum piece. And I followed that up by drilling a larger hole to accept a 1/4 inch bolt. Now the minute I drilled the hole, I realized I may have a problem with the two bolts interfering, being that they're right up against each other. So I decided to take a different direction, and being that the aluminum angle I'm using, it's thick enough that I can thread it. So for now I'm going to have one bolt in here with a nut on it, and the rest of the hose is going to be all threaded. Now I could replace the piece of aluminum on the inside, but I decided to just leave it that way. And while I was at it, I went around the entire top and threaded all the holes. And at this point, I'm no longer using the nut, so I'm gonna cut the bolts down. And what I want to do now is put the nut on the bolt, so when I cut the screw, I can unscrew the nut off, and that would kind of recreate the thread. With the holes along the top being done, I can then flip the box upside down and then drill the bottom holes. I place a piece of aluminum along the short side, and this way we can attach the box to the plywood. Now for this location, we need to make the bolts a bit longer because it needs to now go through 2 pieces of aluminum angle. Now you'll want to make sure all the bolts are cut down and try to make them as flush as possible, then file them off. This way no one get hurt or get ripped open by a sharp piece of metal. And at this point, the box is pretty much together, and I just want to go around and tighten all the bolts to make sure everything is solid. The long side of the toolbox needs to be supported somehow, so I'm going to use aluminum angle, and I'm going to use that to hold on to the plywood at the bottom and also attach it to the side. The short side of the toolbox is very well secured. It's held in place with threaded bolts. Now I knew I wanted to have a clean aesthetic, and I didn't want to have a bunch of holes drilled in the side of the toolbox. This may do the trick. Now this is a high strength double-sided foam tape that allow you to create an easy, long-lasting bond. I tried adding the aluminum angle in place, but it just seemed like it was a bit tight and it kept getting stuck. So I just removed the side and then installed the aluminum angle, which made life a lot easier. With the tape in place, I can now apply a few clamps on the outside to apply pressure onto the foam tape. I'm going to let that sit for a little while, and then I'm going to tackle the top. Now I knew I wanted a wood top, but I didn't want it to look too plain, so I routed out a section so I can sit a piece of the diamond plated aluminum in the top. Now that the top is all routed out, I can now apply glue along the side and then attach the trim. And with all the glue up done, I can let that sit for a little bit, clean up the shop some, and then get back to it. Now after looking around, I was able to find these marine grade stainless steel hinges that was in a boating section, and I was able to use those for this box. I think it blend in and it should work just fine. Now I marked all the holes and then I used a small drill bit and slowly let the drill just do the work. Don't put in the pressure because the bit is so small they easily break. And as a reminder, this sheet is an 1/8 inch thick, so that's enough thickness for us to create thread inside of it, and that way I don't have to have nuts on the inside. Now if you don't have a tap set, then you can always just drill a bigger hole and use nuts and bolts. Before securing the hinge to the top, what I wanted to do was make sure I had it in a good position, that I thought it looked good and it fit perfectly. Then I took masking tape just to hold the top in place so it don't shift around on me while I'm drilling. And to install the hinge, I'm going to use a self-centering bit. I was really on the fence when it came to adding the handles. I wasn't sure if I was going to add one at the top or one on each side. The side looked better for me, and also it was good to put them on the side because I didn't have to worry about adding a latch on the front. I cut the bolts and also cleaned them up on the inside. Next, I created a tool holder so that I can put my screwdrivers and other things in it. This side was also held in place with the VHB tape, which also make the inside of the toolbox versatile because you can basically change pieces at will. If I ever get tired of this location or I just don't want this inside of it, I can always just pry it off. Alright, so we're at that point now, so I'm going to sand the top down, which I'm so happy that this is not a bigger piece. I hate sanding, I'm sure a lot of us do. I really can't wait till my daughter get bigger so I can tell her how cool sanding is, that way I don't have to sand. And usually when I get to this stage, I start feeling the excitement. Now I already cut down the diamond plated piece that's going to go in the top. Now I'm going to scruff it up a little bit so that I can have a better bond. Now a quick way to attach this is just taking some 2-part epoxy, mixing that together, spreading it over on the top, and then just sit it in place. Now it seemed like my friends over on Patreon were on the same page with me that the box would look better if we didn't have an exterior latch, so I decided to add a magnetic one on the inside. I also thought it made sense to flush mount the screws, this way it's not as visible and begging for attention. This metal piece came with the magnetic latch, but I bent it so that it didn't overhang inside the box. I then drilled a pilot hole and attached it with one screw. Well, that worked out well. I did want to add some hand tools on the top just so I don't have the dead space. I added a threaded insert here, which kind of gave me a reusable hole that I can just keep threading and unthread anything to it. This is one of the options I had in mind where you can use a washer and a wing screw to secure any tool in place. The other option was to use a piece of Velcro and staple it down. Now being that it is just Velcro, weight may be an issue, so if you have something too heavy, this may not work. I would also secure the top Velcro, just the bottom, so that it always stays in place. Sometimes I get excited when I hold on to things, and just so happen to hold on to some of these feet glides that I just salvaged from some other piece of furniture. Now I don't want to damage the wood and have the box keep tipping over, so I decided to add a piece of chain on it to keep the lid from going too far back. And here's a good example of what I mean by attaching your tool with the Velcro. And at this point the box is done, so let's recap on what happened. I took a trip to my local metal store and found some scrap pieces of metal. I cut the metal down to size and attached the pieces using an aluminum angle and bolts. I found some marine grade hinges and attached those to the back. I installed bulky handles on the side to fit the industrial feel. And at the same time, I still wanted a simple look by installing a magnetic catch. A piece of chain was installed to stop the lid from going too far back. We mitered the trim along the top, and we also routed out a top section to insert a piece of the diamond plate. A few tools were docked in the top using 2 different methods. I made a tool holder that was installed with the 3M tape, and I also finished off the box by installing a piece of 1/4" board. Now I strongly believe this can be on the list of gifts to people or yourself. Now by creating this box, I also feel like there's many opportunities that this have opened up that you can make, whether it's storage box, chest, and all sorts of things that you may want on hand that you need that ruggedness to it. Now overall, I am very happy with the outcome of this box, and I think it came out better than I actually expected it to. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I last post, but for whatever reason, I just keep getting sick. I've been super stuffy, so I couldn't basically do some voiceover, but I'm getting better right now, so that's definitely a plus. Also, I do want to let you guys know that I've created another channel for my Latino friends, my Spanish-speaking friends that like what I do on this channel. You don't understand what I'm saying. We're going to be translating a lot of my videos into Spanish. I'm not going to be speaking Spanish. Could you imagine that? But we're gonna have that translated, and it's gonna be on DIY Creators Latino. I'm gonna have a link down in the video description if you guys wanna check that out and subscribe to it so you can now understand me. Well, that's it for this one, guys. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and comment, like, all that good stuff. I will see you in the next one.